The truth is, if you've ever known the roller coaster of life's highs and lows, you can identify with Moses. Because Moses knew the epitome of success, the epitome of failure, and everything that falls in between success and failure. He knew it all, every aspect of life. Moses understood, he knew. He knew God's miraculous workings in his life, and he knew what it was to feel as if God had abandoned him and that he was all alone and in life as well. You might remember that Moses was born to Jewish Hebrew parents during a time when there was a royal decree that every newborn Jewish male was to be put to death immediately upon birth. They were to take that child and they were to put it to death. These children were not allowed, every male child was not permitted to live. However, Moses' mother, in giving birth to Moses, decided to hide him from those who would carry out this death threat, hide him from these authorities. And as the boy began to grow and became about 3 months old, she placed him in a basket, hid him alongside the edge of the Nile River, and just began to watch from a distance to see indeed what would take place. Now, it happened, and I want to just say that in quotes, and it happened, unquote, that Pharaoh's daughter found Moses and decided to keep him and raise Moses as her own. And we know the story how really, Moses' sister was watching on, and she came to the Pharaoh's daughter and said, "Would you like me to find a nursemaid?" and all those things. I don't want to spend much time in all that, but what we find is that basically, ultimately, Moses winds up in the home of Pharaoh, and he's being raised as the daughter, the adopted son of the daughter of Pharaoh. And with that, when Moses comes into the home of Pharaoh, he falls into the lap of luxury and comfortable living as he grows up in Pharaoh's home. And he was well known, really, in Egypt's higher ranks. Moses was this kind of special child, this child that was brought into the home of Pharaoh and was being raised in this fashion. Moses had an influence in Pharaoh's home as well. However, we're told that when Moses, as he grew older and became about the age of 40, he went out to where his fellow Hebrews were working, and he saw an Egyptian beating up on one of his fellow Jewish brothers. And in seeing this Egyptian fighting with this Jewish brother, he took matters into his own hand, and in the course of the events, he killed the Egyptian. And when this became known that Moses had killed the Egyptian, he fled into the wilderness for his own safety. And there he spent 40 years just kind of as a fugitive, just not wanting to return to Pharaoh's house and not wanting to risk his life. And so there he remained a fugitive for 40 more years, experiencing what it was to go from notoriety and prosperity to nothingness and seemingly failure. Can you imagine what it would have been? What it would have been like to go from Pharaoh's home to the backside of some wilderness where you were just watching the flocks of another. That's the whole span of Moses' life, from that aspect of wealth and prosperity to that which is on the backside of some desert. He spends 40 years there, and as Moses reaches 80 years of age, God comes and speaks to him through a burning bush and begins to restore Moses' life and purpose. We know the story well. We think, great story. Nice story, huh? Well, that's just the beginning. Because it doesn't tell the full events of what really unfolds in Moses' life. Because it's from this meeting with God through the burning bush that Moses begins to enter into the greatest fight of his life, what I feel to be the greatest fight of his life. Because there God says, I want you to go back to Egypt. He tells Moses, I want you to go back to Egypt, and I want you to confront the new Pharaoh, and I want you to be an instrument that sets my people free. I want you to go back to Egypt, and I want to use you, Moses, to set the Israelites free from the bondage that they've been in now for some 400 years. It was God saying, as if God was saying, Moses, you know what it is to have succeeded, and you know what it is now to have seemingly failed. Now I want to give you another chance at succeeding. And God wanted to lift Moses up from the pit he saw himself in, which trapped him and kept him unproductive and on the backside of some patch of wilderness. God wanted to take him from that and bring him to a new area. God was going to take him back to Pharaoh, back to the start, and he was going to go face to face with the biggest threat of his life. It was to be a showdown. Moses before Pharaoh. It was going to be a showdown in that event. And Moses knew that he was in for the biggest fight of his life. Now you might say to me, well, Pastor, I'm not so sure that this was the biggest fight of his life. And you might cite some other things, like the time when Moses was, when they first went out after they escaped Egypt, and they were out there on the first battlefront, and Moses has to go to the mountain, and Aaron and Hur stand on each side and hold up his arms, and as long as his arms are upheld, Joshua prevails. But when his arms, you might say that was the greatest fight of his life, but I don't think so. I really think that this was the greatest fight of Moses' life, because if Moses somehow fails at this point, then nothing else really mattered.
Amen.
So what we find is that this is a fight for Moses' mind. This is a fight for his spirit. This was about courage. He's going to face his past. He's going to face his failures. There'd be no battles on the hilltops if Moses doesn't conquer this situation right here, right now. And so this was a fight that he could not lose. This is a fight he had to win. And I believe it was Moses' greatest fight. Now, up to this point, he's on the backside of a desert saying, I am a failure. You can't go back and revisit that. You killed a man. You can't be everything God has ever asked you to be. You're not going to succeed in life because of all that you've done. And Moses is in this fight where he's going to either live in his present situation or he's going to allow God to lift him up and restore him. And I think so often about how the enemy likes to tell us, about our past and all the things that would disqualify us and bring us to a place where we no longer measure up to what God wants. And that's basically what's going on in this situation. And so Moses is in a fight for his mind, in a fight for his spirit. And it's the greatest fight of his life. I want to ask you today, how do you face that which is the most intimidating factor in your life? How does one face that which seems to have brought on your biggest failure? How does one go back and conquer areas that have left you in defeat and ruin?